What is estate planning? What should I be doing? Do I have everything that I need to have in place?
Everyone always says, well, I'll get to that after this. People have to have those wills. If you are no longer around, where do you want those assets to go?
If you would need to change your insurance benefits at your company because of this life event, you need to make changes to your estate plan.
Probably the biggest mistake that we see. One spouse makes all the financial decisions. The other one is the CEO. Welcome to Wealth Strategies Unleashed with Concenture Wealth Management. I'm Robert Gilliland, and with me I have
Karen Hyder.
Hey, thank you all so much for joining us again on this episode. Hope you find some good value out of it, or at least that's what our goal is to provide some give you some good nuggets that you can maybe take away. And so Karen, what's going on?
Okay, before that, gotta refresh, gotta back up a little bit. We've gotten into this habit of telling a dad joke before every podcast. I love telling them. I'm hoping our audience is loving hearing them. So we got to back up and do that first. Are you ready for today's?
Well, I haven't been ready for any of them. So let's.
Ouch.
I'm really hoping.
I'm going to wow you with this one.
I'm really hoping this one pulls it out.
Okay. Why are skeletons so calm?
I don't know.
I thought you were about to laugh because you were about to say the answer to it. You ready for it?
Okay.
Because nothing gets under their skin. I think that one's so good.
That's worth a not a belly laugh. That's good. That wasn't bad. Wasn't bad.
Right.
So what's been going on?
You know, we've had a lot of conversations lately with clients and potential clients as well of a lot of people wanting to find out what happens if something were to happen to them yesterday. What's going to happen to their assets? We've had a lot of questions about what is estate planning? What should I be doing? Do I have everything that I need to have in place? You know, just what all actually needs to happen in the event of something catastrophic, I would say. So let's chat about that today.
Yeah, I think that's good. That's good. The one thing that I think a lot when you're going through and think about estate planning is everyone always says, well, I'll get to that after this. Mm-hmm. I'll get to that after I do that. And the reality is there's a lot of things that you can go and do that are very, very easy, that don't require attorneys and things like that. But at the very least, you have to have something.
Yeah.
Because when you die without a will and you have assets that are not passed along by beneficiaries, like IRAs or life insurance policies, annuities, like that, then you have to go to probate, which is not a big deal in the state of Texas, but that will has to, those assets have to be distributed per the courts. And if you don't have a will, they just have to guess. Mm-hmm. The biggest thing that people have to do, and I'm glad that we're having these conversations, people have to have those wills because no one can really predict the day that there is going to be their last.
Yep.
Right? And I mean, quite frankly, if we could predict our last day, our job as financial planners would be a heck of a lot easier.
So much easier,
right?
Yeah.
How much do you want to leave? 0? Great. This is how much you're going to spend till this day. Piece of cake.
Yeah.
But it is vitally important that people have their wishes down on paper and in a place that someone can act on them.
So pause right there. We skipped over completely. When we talk about estate planning, just what does that mean in layman's terms for the average person? What all does that encompass, and what are we talking about here?
Estate planning, a lot of people think estate planning means I have to have a gazillion dollars and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. Estate planning is really nothing more than thinking through if you are no longer around, where do you want those assets to go? Mm-hmm. And having the instructions for how that happens. Because if you don't say how you want them to do it, the state of Texas will say how you want to do it. And you much rather have that voice. So there's very simple things that you can go through to do.
What are some of the things, so when we look at an estate plan and we talk about setting up your wishes of how you want your assets to pass, what kind of things are the essentials that people need to have in place?
Well, I think one of the easiest things that people can do is go and check their beneficiaries on accounts that have beneficiaries.
Yes.
That's your IRA, 401k. Old 401ks, life insurance policies, old life insurance policies. Quite frankly, we have had scenarios where a client's ex-husband died and didn't change the beneficiary on a life insurance policy. So
After the
it was
divorce.
his ex-wife who received those funds. Luckily, she was a person that disclaimed them, so then it went back to the estate, which was his wife. That's a whole nother story. But she didn't have to do that legally.
Yep.
Making sure you have your beneficiary designations. That's something that we do with clients, as you well know, on an annual basis. Say this is where they are. That way, anything changes, you can go through there. But you do need to have a will. That's his matter. I personally think that it's better for you to go to an attorney as opposed to do it online. That way, you have a licensed professional who hopefully is a specialist in estate planning. It's not terribly expensive, but if you make a mistake in that document, it can end up being very expensive to the estate. Estate means everything that's left over after you're gone without regard to how much it is.
Yep.
It can end up being very expensive if you don't have it worded the right way. I think it's also really important to have what's called a healthcare power of attorney, someone that if all of a sudden you become incapacitated can say, yes, give them that medicine. Yes, you can take this spleen out or whatever, right?
Is there anything a healthcare power of attorney doesn't cover? Or you said
Well,
it give you medication.
a healthcare power of attorney doesn't necessarily cover, it helps you make medical decisions. That's not for lack of a better term, this sounds pretty cold, the pull the plug.
Okay.
Right? That's called a directive to physicians.
Okay.
That's where I say, I do not want heroic measures taken. That is a completely separate document from a healthcare power of attorney.
Okay.
Healthcare power of attorney says I can make medical decisions for you in the event that I need to. You also need to have what's called a durable power of attorney. That gives someone the ability, your agent, the ability to conduct financial matters on your behalf. So the documents that you need, a will.
Yep.
Something happens to me, this is where the assets go. You need to have a healthcare power of attorney. If I'm sick and I can't say, yes, I've got a cut here, I need you to give me stitches. You need to have someone to be able to do that. You need to have a durable power of attorney. I'm incapacitated and I can't sign checks to pay my bills. This is how that can happen. And then as a matter of personal choice, if it's important to you for whatever reason, a directive to physicians, which is kind of, that's between you and your decision there, and you need to have one of those.
So for someone that doesn't have those in place, obviously the first step is get those taken care of. But what about these people who we come across that say, oh yeah, I did that 20 years ago. How often do you think it's important to review these and update these? What's your take on that?
Laws and rules change all the time. Clearly, the need for complex estate planning because of laws that Congress has enacted. The value of the estate needs to be over $22 million before you really have any sort of estate tax. So prior to that, and anything below that, relatively simple wills can take care of things. There probably is a better way to transfer assets to children. One of the things I think about is that it probably makes sense to leave money in trust to children. 50% of marriages end up in divorce.
Yep.
My kids end up thinking that they're making a good choice. They end up getting divorced. I don't want those assets that they end up getting left to be part of that estate. So leaving those assets in trust may make sense. You need to sit down with an attorney and go in and draft that. But the answer to your question is how often should you do it? I think that maybe every 5 to 10 years you need to have it reviewed. Most attorneys will do that very inexpensively. Understand if your situation has changed. There are plenty of situations where people have guardians assigned to guardians named for their minor children that they are no longer friends with. Or something's happened, maybe they're or not around, or executors or executrix is?
Executrix, I think.
Well, what happens if you have multiple? They're executrix.
Executri.
Yeah, I have no idea. You're whether it's an executor or an executrix, that maybe they're no longer friends. Maybe something's happened and they're not in a situation, or they predecease you. So you need to review those things. That becomes.
Well, and I would say not just every 5 to 10 years. Anytime you have a major life event, also
I agree,
that needs to be
100%.
as well. So a divorce,
Good point.
birth, adoption, passing of a family member, a major life event. The way I like to think of it is if you would need to change your insurance benefits at your company because of this life event, the same type of thing applies. You need to make changes to your estate plan in an implication like that or an event like that.
Man, I think that is spot on. That you're 100%.
So when
right.
do you think, I know we often hear a lot of times a deterrent for people taking care of their estate plan is they think lawyer and they think high cost. When do you think it's important for a lawyer to be involved? What's the purpose of getting involved with one?
Yeah, I think if nothing else, the importance of getting involved with one is to make sure you have your I's dotted and T's crossed. The real key is making sure you're going to an estate planning attorney. So that way they understand the laws with regard to estates. I think that it becomes vitally important to sit down with someone to get that initially drafted. It also is vitally important to have it reviewed by someone who understands the law because they're obligated through their continuing education to stay on top of it. Yes, can you go online and pull one up? Yeah, you can, but what happens if, and I'm making this up, there's a comma in the wrong place which actually changes the way the court interprets the wording and it completely changes what needs to happen. So having an attorney that can understand where it is to make sure that it's there, I think they're important. The reality is, does it cost money to have an attorney do it? Yes. Do you have to spend $5,000, $10,000 to do it? If you have a complex estate and a complex family situation and you've got assets all over the United States, yeah, it's going to cost that. But if you are someone who's worked hard your whole life and not amassed a nice amount of wealth, you really don't have an estate tax issue, you own one, maybe two homes, it's not really going to be that expensive to have your will and have it set up.
One question I thought of too when you were mentioning something just a second ago, what if somebody has everything in place and they live in one state and they decide to make a move in retirement and they change states? Do they need to make changes then or are they pretty much set up?
100%. So I'll give you a really good example. In the state of Texas, probate is really easy. Is probate a matter of public record? Yes. But I don't know that I've ever heard of anyone going down to the courthouse and reading wills.
Neither.
So it's not really that big of a deal that probate is very easy in the state of Texas if your documents are in order. But if you go to different state, California, Arkansas, probate is a percentage of the value of the estate that is in probate. Could be 10, could be 4%. Texas, that's not the case. So if you move from Texas, let's say, to Arkansas, it might make sense for you to have an attorney in Arkansas familiar with Arkansas estate law, review everything, and walk you through the ins and outs.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, a lot of people, when they're looking at this, start to think about living trusts when they're looking at their estate.
Yeah, we hear that all the time.
In the state of Texas, there may be some attorneys that have opinions about this that are different from mine, but in the state of Texas, I don't know that it is as important. The biggest reason why living trusts were set up was some really smart attorneys in California figured out a way to avoid probate. They established this living trust. And the reason why is because estates in California at that time, may still be the case, are 10% of the value of the estate that goes through probate. So this thing avoids probate. So in California, it's pretty important to have a living trust. There are other states, Arkansas is one of those. Texas, that's not an issue or a problem. So I don't know that you necessarily need one, but in other states you might. The other thing is that other states have different laws than what Texas does in how the passage of assets.
Yeah.
In Louisiana, they follow a Napoleonic code, and the state of Louisiana, go Tigers.
Always have to throw that in.
If someone passes away, the way that those assets pass, if something's not specifically named or if something's not worded the right way, could be like They go to Billy Bob and Joe Bob's second cousin, twice removed from the aunt on that side because of believe me, Louisiana Napoleonic Code is wacko. So you need to have someone in that state who's familiar with those state laws go through to review it.
That makes sense. So we've gone over a ton. You've given a lot of good information. I think the best way to wrap this up, what are some of the common mistakes you see happen or some of the biggest things people need to be aware of to prevent happening?
Yeah, one is make sure you're aware of the assets that you have, the accounts that you have that have beneficiaries. Make sure your beneficiaries are set up. That's easy to do.
Yeah, that's the easiest one.
The other thing that's really important, and we suggest to all of our clients that they do that, is have a trusted advisor. Most of our clients rely on us that has access to a copy of that.
Yes.
That way, and something happens, and the people who have to deal with it can have someone who knows and understands what the goals are, right? I would have a conversation. We have the conversation with our clients around what this is, where this is. It makes no difference to us where these funds go when they pass away. Our job is to make sure that we're told where it's supposed to go in there. And the will's what does that. Mistakes are not having your beneficiaries checked, making sure you have enough life insurance. If I'm married, well, I am married, but if I was married, and had young kids, and all 5 of them were in elementary school, I probably need to have a lot more life insurance. That way, if something happens to me, my wife's lifestyle and those kids can still go to college, right?
Makes sense.
And her life. So it's important to go through to evaluate the life insurance that you have. It's important to go through to kind of pay attention to your balance sheet, your financial plan. How does all this happen? Once a year, we sit down with our clients and we review some aspect of that. That's what's vital. The mistake is ignoring it or not thinking it's important, or basically just neglecting it. If you have another child and you want them, or you have a child that you don't want to become a beneficiary on an account, you need to make sure that happens the right way.
Yep.
Inside.
I'm going to add one more final one to it. For the couples where there are 2 spouses, I think it is so important that both spouses know where everything is, are both intimately involved, know passwords, locations of all the assets, know where the documents are, and they're not waiting until there's a health scare or something else that prompts those conversations, that everyone in the family that is a decision maker knows where things are ahead of time and is part of those conversations.
Karen, that is probably the biggest mistake that we see people make. One spouse makes all the financial decisions. The other one is the CEO, right? You have the CEO and CFO. CFO understands and knows how to do everything. CEO has no clue.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, it's put on their lap.
Yep. And CEO now has to become CFO
That's
in the
right.
middle of a lot of emotional time. It's very tough.
That's why they need to be involved in financial decisions at least once a year, understand what's happening there at least. But you're exactly right. There needs to be some place they know. Go get the will here. Go get the powers of attorney here. Go get this here.
Yep.
Passwords are huge.
Exactly.
Huge, because you probably don't want to have passwords behind 3 different firewalls that you need to use your retina and thumbprint to be able to get into. So that's vitally important.
Well, this is great information. I think a lot of our listeners are going to have a lot of good information to take back and some to-dos more than likely.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's going to be questions. And that's where we want to have a conversation.
Yes.
And so we're here. Feel free to give us a call. Just want to say thank you so much for checking out this episode of Wealth Strategies Unleashed. And we know pretty certain there'll be some takeaways, as Karen said, some homework. But if you need help, please feel free to give us a call. Hope you have a great week. We'll see you next week.
The information contained herein is intended to be used for educational purposes only and is not exhaustive. Diversification and/or any strategy that may be discussed does not guarantee against investable losses, but are intended to help manage risk and return. If applicable, historical discussions and/or opinions are not predictive of future events. The content is presented in good faith and has been drawn from sources believable to be reliable. The content is not intended to be legal, tax, or financial advice. Please consult a legal, tax, or financial professional for information specific to your individual situation.
This work is powered by Concenture Wealth Management, registered representative of Sanctuary Securities, Inc., an investment advisor of Sanctuary Advisors, LLC. Securities offered through Sanctuary Securities, Inc. Member FINRA, SIPC. Advisor services offered through Sanctuary Advisors, LLC. An SEC registered investment advisor. Concenture Wealth Management is a DBA of Sanctuary Securities, Inc. and Sanctuary Advisors, LLC.